Hey everyone, this is a video response to TrustinJC, also known as Laverne, who has done a video response to my recent Do You Know Your Bible video, part 19. Now Laverne, you're incorrect actually in thinking that you haven't viewed any of my videos before, because you viewed and responded to one that I'd done a while ago on Isaiah 53. And I'd actually done a video response to that you had approved, but I can understand why you don't remember that, or why you might not want to remember that. Because you kind of, in my video response to yours, I kind of illustrated how you glossed over and ignored a lot of my important points. And that's what you seem to have done again here in this latest video response to me. First of all, I would like to say that I'm not trying to say that the New Testament authors were rewriting any of these previous stories. You know, the stories of Jesus raising people from the dead are not Elijah 2.0 or Elisha 2.0 or anything like that. Their intent is not to basically retell these stories, but they are using them as influential, records and stuff like that in the narratives that they're crafting for Jesus. And I don't believe that they were doing this to try and say, oh look, Jesus is just like Elijah or Elisha or anything. I think that they were doing this because maybe these were the most familiar accounts of raising people from the dead that they knew of. And when they were thinking of things for miracles that they could put in for narratives in Jesus' life, these things probably jumped out to them because they were well known. But what's disappointing to me, honestly, about your video is that you don't address any of the things that I point out as similarities. Instead, you opt for an alternative view, which is, well, what about these things that aren't similar between these different accounts? And like I just explained, I'm not trying to say that these are complete rewritings of these original stories. They've just been influenced by these previous stories. And so there's not going to be things that are always going to line up between the two of them. But that's why I was hoping that you would actually address my real similarities that I bring up in the video. Because if you were to debunk those, then yeah, I would agree with you, my position has no grounding and stuff. But you don't, and these are not insignificant similarities. But perhaps a better way to put this that might be more understandable is to talk about the Greek and Roman gods. And we know that the Roman gods were inspired by the Greek gods because of the many different characteristics and similarities that they share. But in some cases there are differences, like with the god of war, for example. In Greek mythology, Ares is the god of war, and he's just the god of war. But in Roman mythology, Mars is the god of war, and he's also the god of agriculture and fertility. But does this difference really mean that one was not inspired by the other, or influenced by the other? Well, no. Most people, especially, scholars of Greek mythology and Roman mythology, are still pretty adamant that they are, that Mars was influenced by Ares because they share so many striking similarities and characteristics between the two of them. And this is what I'm trying to emphasize when I say that these New Testament authors didn't necessarily rewrite these stories. Their purpose wasn't to do a remake or anything like in movie terminology, but their purpose was more to use these stories to craft stories about Jesus. So they are definitely different stories, but one clearly has been influenced and inspired by the others. It's not just the fact that there's women involved in both stories. That's maybe one minor detail among many. It's also the fact that the woman is met at the town gate, which in Greek is the same phrase or word that's used. And it's also the fact that they're both raised from the dead by the prophet touching on them and, speaking out loud to them. And it's also the fact that this passages end with, and he gave him to his mother, which is also the same phrase in the Greek. And I think the similarities between language here is the biggest issue, and so I'm a little disappointed you didn't touch on that. Because why else would these stories have such very similar language unless one of them was borrowing from the other? I mean, we often put things in our own words and stuff, but we're not talking about one Greek word in a lot of these cases. We're talking about 4 or 5 or even, 6 or 7 or 8 in some cases. So for these phrases to be identical in the Greek language, which we know, like I say in the video, that the New Testament authors were reading the Greek version of the Old Testament, the Septuagint, there's an awful lot here that just can't be coincidental. I mean, Christians will attribute things to prophecy based on far less similarity, you know? So, I just don't understand that. But, to finish this up, finally, he also makes a comment that, or questions at least, why the Jews, or other Christians, or other people, didn't notice these sorts of similarities and stuff to other pagan myths and everything. And the thing is, they did. The 2nd century Greek writer Celsus, in his work The True Word, or The True Doctrine, actually noted a lot of the similarities between Christian beliefs and pagan religions and pagan myths and other sorts of things. So this is not a relatively recent or modern phenomenon, like a lot of apologists incorrectly assert. Anyways, I really don't have much else to say, and I feel like I've already kind of wasted a lot on a video that's nothing more than this is foolishness, foolishness, foolishness. So, anyways, yeah. Thanks for watching.